Hey guys, Tarke here, and Diablo 4 has officially been announced, and I've got a couple of things to break down upon it. Now, apparently, according to what was said on the official after announcement panel, this isn't even Blizzard soon. The way that I take that, Blizzard soon is kind of like, you'll get this in like 2 years. Usually when they announce something, Blizzcon expects it to come a year later. Usually if it was to be longer than that, they'd be like, it will come when it comes, it'll be coming soon. So that's like the 2 years. So by saying it's not even Blizzard soon, that makes me think this is like 3 years out. Now, I actually made a video talking about what my expectations and hopes were, and aside from the release date, most of my expectations and hope were hit. I actually said, I was kind of saying maybe we'll get like a 2020 release, super optimistically, because I thought this was way further along in development. Nah. From everything we've seen, there are going to be 5 classes at launch. They only have 3 so far. It doesn't seem like they have any of the endgame stuff focused. It seems like they haven't really got any of their itemization stuff that locked down. Also, their talent tree stuff looks very, very early days. The combat animations for the 3 classes they've shown us looks very promising. The enemy design and the textures look very muddy. Now, keeping in mind that this game is at best 2 years out, it'll probably look quite different by then. However, there are some concerns, especially considering a big draw for this is like console performance. How good is it going to look in console so many years from now? But if this is like very early alpha footage, this looks good for alpha. So anyway, before I break into what I liked and disliked on the announcement, I'll just quickly go through my expectations and tick off the ones I got right. So release date, got wrong. Group dynamics, got right. They didn't mention box price. From what we've seen of itemization, sort of, apparently there will still be sets. They didn't mention anything about Twitch integration, but the group focus, the atmosphere, all of that was kind of on the money. So what have I liked? The cinematic. The cinematic is beautiful. I'm not going to play it to you because it's over 9 minutes long. I highly recommend that you sit down and just take it all in for yourself. The cinematic is great. The cinematic alone makes me happy that this is a thing. The Barbarian. So even though we've only seen 3 classes so far, the Barbarian has a very interesting weapon system. So the Barbarian actually has 4 weapons. It has 2 two-handed weapons and then 2 one-handed weapons. Different abilities use different weapons. And if you look at the Barbarian combat, there was also some streams from the convention. Different abilities will rotate between them, and the animations, the way it swapped between different weapons, it looked really, really smooth, and you get the stats from all different weapons. I was watching some gameplay one guy was doing, and he was playing on his sorcerer. Normally the fireball shoots 1 fireball. It dropped a legendary staff, it made it shoot 3 fireballs, so basically like an LMP staff. It seems like there'll be a lot of unique items which have like uniques which are very much tied to individual skills, kind of like a Grim Dawny kind of system. So if you have that, but then you've got like 4 barbarian weapons, then I can imagine you can do some very cool and interesting combos. So I very much liked that. I also saw some of the druid combat. It seems like the shape-shifting is kind of like a series of short cooldowns. So like you shift and then you're like a bear for a couple of attacks, or then you're like a wolf for a few attacks. Very excited to see the return of the druid. The druid shifting looked very smooth, very fluid, and there's still some like permanent pet systems, either ravens or wolves. So the combat stuff looks pretty cool. I was pretty underwhelmed by the sorcerer gameplay that I saw. It could just be a case of I was watching level 20 combat systems, and a case of the guy who was streaming it had never played it before, and the fact this is incredibly early days. But the combat from both the Barbarian and Druid look very good in my opinion. This is very much a open world MMO system, so there are dungeons. When you go into the dungeon, you get hit with a load screen, then the only people in that dungeon is yourself and your party. As you can see in the background, there are actually mounts needed because the map is so huge. Now, we saw a teeny sliver. If you imagine the map is this YouTube video, we literally saw a section like that big. The maps look insanely huge. However, I'm pretty sure they only have this much actually, like, made. This is, like, screaming alpha as hell to me. The mount stuff, yeah, seems kind of interesting. Now, with the open world stuff, there are actually other players, and you'll encounter other players in the open world. There are enemies in the open world, but there's going to be a lot of, like, phasing happening and zoning, but you will see players that you're not partied with out and about. So it's very much a very social experience, which I like. Apparently it was stressed on the panel that you can go fully solo if you want to, but again, considering that PoE has weak group play, I think focusing on group play is very important for Diablo 4 to kind of have a place. Runes. We saw runes dropping in some of the gameplay stuff, so there is the return of runes, and they seemed kind of interesting. We don't know the full extent of it. We don't know how the rune words will work, if there are rune words, but we have at least just base rune stuff. The combat UI was pretty clean. The inventory stuff looked awful, but just the base combat UI looked pretty decent. Again, it's alpha. It looked very console friendly. The combat seems much, much slower, which again, I'm a big fan of, but this is again level 20 combat we saw, so can't confirm. Also, some of the miscellaneous animations, like the way that gold bursts out of enemies, chests and barrels, that sort of stuff, I liked. Things that I'm kind of indifferent towards. So the mount stuff, it's kind of cool, but it doesn't blow me away. I don't mind it though. Some people are pretty anti it. PvP, apparently it's going to have a very strong PvP focus. Now, personally, I'm not that into PvP in ARPGs. I used to be really into it in D2 when I was a kid, and I was very much looking forward to it when it came to Diablo 3, because I used to do a lot of PvP in World of Warcraft and like arenas and stuff. However, as I've gotten older, as I've done all the content I've done for Path of Exile, as I've spoken to devs and like talked about balance stuff, balancing a PvE and PvP style ARPG is incredibly difficult, and that is such a massive sink of resources to make it feel good that I worry that it's going to hinder the base experience for some people. Saying that, however, there are a lot of people who are desperate for more PvP, and because of that, they're not getting that fix in PoE, so I think it's good that they have a game they can go to for ARPG PvP content. I just worry that it may not be that well-rounded. I think there'll be massive issues, and the power balance is going to be very skewed, so anyone who's played a lot of something like Destiny might know what I'm talking about. Things that I disliked. The graphics. The atmosphere, the world building seems cool, but these graphics look incredibly muddy. The textures look very Diablo 3 skin pack. That being said, considering this is at the very, very earliest 2 years out, most likely 3 or even more, I guess this is a good looking alpha. I worry a bit when it comes to like console generations and stuff, with this being designed for the current generation of consoles. The new gen consoles will have backwards compatibility, but do you really want to buy a game which looks like it came from an old generation? Especially if this is coming like 3 years out from now. The new gen consoles have been out for quite a while. I'm expecting next gen consoles to be like holiday season 2020. So that's pretty disappointing. Talent trees. So we saw some early talent tree stuff. They were just like 1% movement speed, 5% damage. Very boring, cookie cutter. At the very bottom of the tree was like 40% more bleed damage, and it was like, oh. The talents were nothing to look at. If you go on MMO Champion, they'll start getting screenshots coming up from different gameplay streams. We'll see coming out at the conventions, more people get their hands on the demos. But it's not even really worth looking at. They were all like 1%, 2% damage increases. Very minor, nothing of interest. Sets still exist according to the panels. I'm very much anti-sets. I feel like sets make itemization incredibly boring in these video games. Sets is one of the worst things about Diablo 3 in my opinion. You can have a lot of fun with Diablo 3 for the 10 minutes it takes before you get a full set of gear, and it's like, now I'm just hunting ancient items and ancient items. The fact that ancient items and ancient items exist is because of sets in my opinion. Go away from sets. I dislike that it's so underdeveloped. I was really hoping that they'd been secretly toiling on this for years and years and years, so I'm very excited to see what does come from this. I will play it when it comes out. They're gonna have the issue that 4.0 is shipping December 2020. By the time this ships, we're gonna be looking at 5.0. Diablo 4 was already an uphill battle competing with Path of Exile. I just don't see it happening now. Yeah. Great for the people who want it. I'll probably play it for a bit, but we have to see a lot more to really be considering this the death of PoE, because it's just one of those things. Gamers tend to be very hyperbolic and very extreme. We just want good games to play. I don't care what it is. I very famously said right after it was announced, if Diablo Immortal was a good game, I'd play it. If it's a shit game, I won't play it. I will play good games. I don't really care who makes them. I just want to have fun and play things that I enjoy. But yeah, in terms of depth, it's looking pretty lacking. Potions, finally. This could very much change. But the potion system that we saw were just stacks, picking up individual potions after each like pack of mobs. Had a bunch of 50 that had a short cooldown. Pretty boring. Basically, to summarize, I think there's some potential there, but it's so far out it's nearly impossible to say. Cinematics look amazing. Another thing which is kind of worth considering is Lost Ark. So by the time this releases, Lost Ark will be out in the West. You can currently play the Russian beta with a VPN, and I've heard there are some like localization mods that are being worked on so you can have it in English and stuff. It seems like this game and Lost Ark will very much fill the same kind of like hole, or the same kind of like genre with the whole MMO elements, basically what I'm saying. We've seen the success of like the Final Fantasy MMO that I don't know. I feel like Lost Ark might be established enough that if they don't have scummy monetization for it, yeah. The cinematic is great. Just watch the cinematic. I was very happy coming out the cinematic. But anyway, I'm Tarke. These are my thoughts. This just makes me even more excited for ExileCon, to be honest. And I imagine everyone at the offices in GGG are sharing a nice little bottle of champagne and having a bit of a giggle, because it's like they thought that like, shit, we need to push this 4.0, we need to get this out early, we've got to compete, and they're like, oh, we can take our time? Yeah, okay. We'll see you later. I do like the slow combat though. Anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.